Hello everybody, and tonight I want to talk about something that is old news because it's from last year, but I think it's very important because it's quite revolutionary, really. When we talk about life out there, quote unquote, life out there. So we talk about life on other planets, life maybe on the moon, not necessarily intelligent life, but even something simple. Whereas what if I told you that there is life? Not there may be life, or there's a question that there could be life or speculation, but there is life in space. And that life may have come from the Earth, which you'll find out in a second as I explain this to you. It might be from the Earth, or it could be completely extraterrestrial. But really that's irrelevant, because the main point is that life is surviving in space. Life has been found, right? This is not theory, this is fact. This comes from um, the Russian news, and I'm going to give you all the links. I'm going to link you to my blog, which I've written about. It comes from the Russian news, and it's an incident concerning the International Space Station. So, life was found alive and surviving in empty space, in the void of space, where there's no oxygen, there's radiation, there's temperature extremes, and it was found on the outside of the International Space Station by Russian cosmonauts. And what happened was the Russian cosmonauts, they were outside cleaning pollution and residue, and they were just generally cleaning the outside, the exterior of the International Space Station. And they were able to take some samples and get it tested, and lo and behold, to everyone's shock and surprise, there was microorganism life, and it was actually sea plankton. Okay. However, and this is the interesting point, the scientists do not know, and they were baffled by the fact that that was there. Okay. Now, had they said, well, it probably came from the oceans and the earth, and what probably happened was, the air currents kind of took the plankton up, and then it kind of attached itself to the exterior of the space station. They believe that it's a mystery how it got there. So if they thought that that was what would happen, then they would have said that that's what probably would have happened, but they didn't. Instead, they declared it a mystery. Personally, I don't think, I know that there's air currents, and I know that things will be blown around and tossed to and fro, but I personally don't believe that plankton from the earth makes its way as high as, through the atmosphere and into space. And certainly not alive, but I don't think even dead or alive. So anyway, let's just discuss for a second what this life actually is. So this life, it has, it's microscopic, but it has a mouth, has limbs, has a digestive tract, has muscles, has a nervous system, and it's a life form known as a tardigrade. Okay. And we don't know how it got there. So therefore, though it's the same as sea plankton, it could be extraterrestrial. But whether it's sea plankton from the earth or whether it's extraterrestrial, what fascinates me is the fact that, it's proved that life can survive in harsh conditions. Like I said, cosmic radiation, zero gravity, temperature extremes. Okay. Now we always think that life out there, outside of our planet, extraterrestrial life, we always think of that from coming from a Goldilocks zone planet. A planet that's the right distance from a similar sun to our own, that is just the right temperature. It's neither too hot nor too cold. Liquid water exists, and a breathable atmosphere. Well, this, I call it plankton, or whatever. Okay. It wasn't breathing oxygen. Okay. And it was surviving in harsh conditions that we wouldn't believe that life. Now, Okay, you know what? You know what this opens up? This opens up a big can of worms, and I'll tell you why. Because when we speculate about the odds of extraterrestrial life, and then we take that further, and we talk about, well, okay, there's probably life, but what about intelligent life? Because that's what we're interested in. I mean, no one's going to be particularly bothered about some bacteria somewhere a few light years away. I mean, we want to communicate with that life. We want to exchange knowledge and this kind of thing. So, um, intelligent life, we think of it as having come from conditions similar to our own, okay? Which then that eliminates a lot of planets. Because, when we look at all the planets out there, we think, okay, well, that planet's no good. That's not going to have life because, it's like, it's really harsh. It's totally barren, and it's like really, really hot or really, really cold, and there's no water. Life's not going to exist. Okay, so we look for the Goldilocks planets, and we're finding more and more and more. And even with the Goldilocks planets alone, we're finding that there's like millions in our galaxy, even billions. And so the odds of there being intelligent life is quite high. It's just a matter of, well, one day we'll make communication, if we haven't already, because, according to the public knowledge, we have not established communication with intelligent extraterrestrials. But, that's another story. But anyway, what about if we open the door to the possibility that there could be intelligent life that's developed, because the simple life, it's basically it's time, yeah. Okay, so enough time has existed on a planet for any kind of starting point of a simple life to develop into intelligent life. Okay, but it's like perhaps not a carbon-based life form. It may be a silicon-based life form. Maybe doesn't need oxygen to breathe. Maybe oxygen is toxic to it, and it needs quite the opposite. Maybe it needs something completely different, a different kind of gas. And perhaps this life thrives in super hot temperatures or super cold temperatures or whatever, is adapted to its environment, that its ideal environment is very far from our ideal environment. Okay? So when we open up the door to the possibility that there could be intelligent life that is completely unlike the way we perceive it, then those odds of based on calculations of the number of Goldilocks type planets out there, and then we kind of surmise from that there's like probably X number of planets that are inhabited by intelligent life forms. We now multiply that by, I don't know, because I haven't done the calculations, but we multiply it probably hundreds or thousands or even millions of times. Yeah, which is pretty exciting. And I conclude that from this discovery a year ago of life existing alive in space. But here's another thing, right? This is my final thought. What if life that can survive in space, which is basically surviving in a void, nothing, it's not just like inhospitable conditions, it's like no conditions, okay? What if it's carried on rocks, say comets or asteroids, right? And then they collide with other heavenly bodies. When we get fragments from space come to the Earth every day, just because we've not had an ELE event of late in recorded history where we're destroyed by a meteorite, doesn't mean that meteorites don't hit the Earth. We get lots of little fragments hitting the Earth every day. They're all out, all the time. Every time you see a shooting star, it's a piece of debris that's come into the Earth's atmosphere and burned up, or some of those pieces of debris make it to the Earth. Now, if there's bacteria or microorganisms or whatever out there in space, hitching a ride on a piece of rock or a piece of metal or a piece of ice, and it kind of comes down to the Earth, okay, could that have happened millions of years ago when life began on the Earth? Maybe. So if that's the case, then are there other planets where life has been spawned and planted from somewhere else? That the life hasn't originated on the planet itself, but it's been planted there? I mean, you take a bird, right? You take a tree, any kind of plant. It didn't just randomly come up out the ground where it exists. In a lot of cases, that tree or that plant exists because the seed was dropped there by a bird, okay, or it was shat. The bird took a shit in the sky and it had a seed or something in its shit, and it got into the ground, and then 20, 30, 40 years later, however long, or 5 years later, there's a tree. So I'm not trying to compare birds with meteorites, but it happens. Shit happens. Yeah, it does. So there's my thoughts, and there's a blog on my website. I'm going to link you to it, and if you go to my blog, you'll see that there's like a link to source where this information came from. So tell me your thoughts. Thank you.